So welcome everybody. We're going to get started here. Very happy for all of you that were able to join us. For me, it's this evening. I'm Ravi. I am currently in Ladakh, India, actually doing some Nekor myself. Today I've just visited one Guru Rinpoche cave just south of Leh, and yesterday I visited a different one that was much more remote, very difficult to get to. Needless to say, I am very excited to be here sharing this amazing information with you, along with our NACOR team here. So many of you probably already know who we are, but many of you might be just meeting us for the first time. So if it's your first time, we're very, very happy to introduce you to the project. And if you've already seen us many times, then we're happy to see you again. As I said, my name is Robbie, and I will be presenting the general framework of this webcast. We'll also be joined by Stefan, Peter, and Nor, who will introduce themselves briefly. If you guys want to say something, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to join you today. I'm Stefan. I'm joining you from Spain, Catalonia, and I'll be sharing today with you the background of the sacred sites.
Hey everyone, I'm Peter. I'm joining you from Samye Hermitage, New York, where we're in the midst of a 35-day retreat. So this is one of the sessions of that retreat for me. Really great to see everyone and really happy to be joining our NACOR team together online with everyone on Guru Rinpoche Day. I will be presenting the sacred events that unfolded at the sites today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Noor, and I am joining from one of the sacred sites which we're going to talk about today, which is Bodhanath in Nepal. And I will be sharing quotations from the principal biography of Guru Rinpoche, which we are following, which is the Pema Kathang, with you today. Thank you very much for joining. Robbie, you're...
We have a very special guest joining us shortly. So if we can just stand by and wait briefly.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
I am joining here from Asura. Guru Rinpoche achieved great Vidya, Mahamudra Vidya city. Today, Guru Rinpoche's day, actually the day of the birth too, in Tibetan calendar. So I'm fully cherishing, inspiring of Guru Rinpoche's footstep of Guru Rinpoche, Nepal, India, Tibet, and / Bhutan. This project we started, and actually my wife Norbu actually put a lot of effort and started this project 10 years ago. And this NACOR team did a great job and finished this 3-step of footstep of Guru Rinpoche book. But book is not alive. It just you need to put the effort to read. And I suggest to Nobula, I said it's very important to make a NACOR explanation in Guru Rinpoche Day, and explaining where is the place, what Guru Rinpoche did, and the significance of the story. in Guru Rinpoche's day for 12 months. I think is going to be make the book alive. So anybody want to go detail, you can order the book and read. And the whole purpose of this is to understand Dharma, especially Vajrayana Dharma, without Guru Rinpoche picture. In the picture is actually Vajrayana Dharma is not going to be exist as now how we experience it. So it's actually one way, very elegant, very beautiful, very productive, very dynamic, and with the same time is a endangered species. Vajrayana practitioners is an endangered species, I think. So not many, but today, whoever participating, I'm very happy to say we have here 260 people that your connection going to be built much more stronger when we know Guru Rinpoche's life story. And just to let you know, myself following this path for many years, but sometimes it's so close to us, still we not cherish. For me, 7 chapter of supplication from Guru Rinpoche. We in Tibetan we say Liuduma. We have a very old Khenpo from Choju Lingpa's monastery. His name is Gyabji Khenpo. Terchen Choju Lingpa, 120 years ago, Terchen Choju Lingpa's his own text, 7 chapter, Liuduma, 7 chapter. The text itself, the old text, is actually his old Khenpo offered to Nobula, my wife. So she supplicate this supplication many times a week. And I do read this 7 chapter when we do the big puja, but I never had a connection as a inspiring. Nobula and me, we are the one of the biggest sponsoring for 100,000 reciting of the 7th chapter Liuduma in Sikkim monastery every year. Pema Kathang, the main Sikh monastery in Sikkim. We are the major sponsor for that, but still I have not much. But yesterday, early morning, 2 to 3 o'clock, I opened a 7th chapter Liuduma. Then I read the small description. The 5 students of Guru Rinpoche requesting to Guru Rinpoche, each of their understanding, their level of their practice and wisdom, and to Guru Rinpoche's instruct the main key points with the box of package as a supplication. And I realized that it's so beautiful, so clear, so amazing, and I'm completely sort of inspired. And now I'm preparing to do soul offering today, right now. I prepare no plastic at all. I have a small plastic, but almost none. Majority plastic I did not buy for environment friendly. Majority is all fruits and different food products. And I'm just doing supplication to Liuduma. Then the time of this story is Guru Rinpoche Nekur is beginning, and Nobula came down, my wife, and she asked me to, why not you just show your face? And I say, yes, of course I can do that. So that's why I took a very beautiful time of yours. I just hijacked for 15-20 minutes. So I know many of you go through difficulty to understand life story of Guru Rinpoche, and sometimes technical or philosophical, or this timetable of the Buddhas, Guru, and all these timetables are going to be challenging. I understand that. But don't look from scholarly level, honestly. It's not good for a spiritual. So I decide to become a practitioner, meaning I want to practice. I don't want to go and think scholar only. I want to practice. So life story is a one way to connect to your practice is actually stories of Guru Rinpoche. So please enjoy your practice, especially inspire Guru Rinpoche, devotion, trust, and you need a lot of connection, accumulation, karmic connection, conditions to able to reach here today to connect to Guru Rinpoche. It's not easy. I understand that. I'm born into practitioner family, but still I challenge in the beginning in my life. So the challenge is good, but the challenge must cross over. Challenge not cross over, then challenge is not good. You cross over the challenges, the difficulties, means you are improving, you are getting wise, you are practicing correct. So I really wish today and every Guru Rinpoche day, until we do the finishing this Guru Rinpoche footstep like cars, I really wish and make aspiration that all of you cross over your challenges for your practice and difficulty that you're facing. And through the life story of Guru Rinpoche, cross over your challenges. Okay? And Guru Rinpoche mentioned in the 7th chapter, he mentioned that to be able to practice Vajrayana, Guru Rinpoche, he said only 3 things very important. Trust the practice, diligence in your practice, and understanding, correct understanding of wisdom, correct understanding. These 3 is the must needed for practitioner. Without trust, you cannot practice, you cannot gain realization, or you cannot do the practice. Without diligence, you're going to have no improvement. Without right understanding, you can do wrong practice. So that's why Guru Rinpoche said, Heba, Chundru, Sherab. Heba meaning trust, Chundru meaning diligence, Sherab meaning correct understanding. So please remember, so simple instruction Guru Rinpoche give. So one of these in lack in you means you have to cross over this obstacle. And you have 3 of this with you means you need to improve all of these 3 of you. You need to improve. Okay. So that's it. So I like to listen for a while. Then I want to give this to now footstep of the people. And I am going to fully support myself in this work. And I want the participant today to tell all our sanghas and let them know and join this for themselves. To understand. It's more than reading the book because it's more interactive. Thank you, all of you. And thank you, 4 of you. And now I'm going to pass this to whoever begin this thing. Thank you very much. And Guru Rinpoche, and all of you realize Guru Rinpoche. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche. We're very, very blessed to have Patrick Rinpoche joining us this evening, as he was a major motivation for the project. So first, I would like to just set the motivation to begin. By the power and the truth of our gathering here today, may all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. May they never be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering. May they dwell in great equanimity that is free from attachment and aversion. Now I would like to invoke Guru Padmasambhava in Tibetan via the 7-line prayer as chanted by Kyabje Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. And Rinpoche was kind enough to give some background to our project, but just to reiterate a little, we began this project on Dakini Day, September 18th, 2014, under the guidance of Rinpoche, and as he said, his wife Norbala. Our mission has been to connect everyone with the extraordinary life and achievements of Guru Rinpoche, igniting inspiration and devotion in the sacred sites where he practiced. Oh, and before I forget, Netan Choling Rinpoche, I would like to thank for his inspiration. Rinpoche was very kind to help us through the process as well. From the very start, our project has been inspired by the profound heart advice found in the renowned Le Dharma, the prayer in 7 chapters, as Rinpoche described. So before I hand over to the next person, Noor, I just want to let you guys know, if you have any questions, to please send them over in the chat. And at the end, we'll try to address as many questions as possible. Thank you.
As Guru Padmasambhava was leaving Tibet through the sacred Gunthang Pass on Shelda Sechu, which is the 10th day of the monkey month, same like today, but in the wood monkey year, he offered his consoling pith instruction to his grieving heart disciple, Khandro Yeshe Sogyal. And he said, "When you recount my life story, you will be filled with inspiration. When you see my qualities and my understanding, deep faith will be born within you. When that faith becomes unshakable conviction, then my blessing will enter and transform you. When your mind is free of all doubts, whatever you wish can be achieved." This beautiful and profound advice lies at the very heart of our endeavor. As we approached Kyabje Domang Yangtang Rinpoche to seek his blessings, he gave us a simple and yet profound instruction, which has since then become our guiding light. He said, primarily follow the Pema Kathang, the Chronicles of Padma, and use it as our guiding reference. And I would like to hand it back over to Robbie to continue.
Hence, the Pema Kathang, discovered by Urgyen Lingpa in the 14th century, serves as our primary source for understanding Guru Rinpoche's life and liberation, with key passages shared during our webcast. This year marks the 10th anniversary of our project, during which we published the 3-part series Following in Your Footsteps, tracing Guru Rinpoche's journey through Nepal, India, and Tibet. We are also updating the NACOR website and app. This has been an ongoing project for some time, and we would like to create a comprehensive treasury of Buddhist sacred sites that you'll be able to find in the NACOR website and in the app. In this webcast series, we will chronologically explore the primary sacred sites associated with Guru Rinpoche's enlightened activity, with each webcast held on Guru Rinpoche Day over the next 11 months, concluding with the Tsokbum celebration in August 2025. This series will include a pilgrimage to Nepal with details to be shared later. This is very exciting, so please stay tuned. This month, we are once again celebrating Guru Rinpoche's birth, as the Tibetan lunar calendar for 2024 features the 6th Tibetan month twice. Our journey begins on the second Trelda Tsechu, marking Guru Rinpoche's birth. In today's webcast, we will explore Guru Rinpoche's aspirations at the Boudha Stupa in Nepal, his sacred birth and upbringing at Dhanakosha and in Uddiyana. So Stefan, I'll now turn it over to you.
So first of all, let us look at the significance and origin and history of Buddhism, Buddhist pilgrimage. And here we will look at that in brief and try to get to the main point because we have a lot to cover today. So it's very interesting in Buddhism that actually, and it's quite a unique feature, that Buddhist pilgrimage or pilgrimage within Buddhism is as ancient as Buddhism itself. And it was actually Buddha Shakyamuni himself who went on a first such pilgrimage and encouraged his followers, his students, to likewise do so and seek out sacred sites. And one of those events that commenced or sparked pilgrimage was which is recorded in the Gatikara Sutra, in which the Buddha arrived at a certain spot and it lit up his face and he started smiling. And it was at that point that his disciples who were there were inquiring what sparked this delight in the Buddha. They were very curious to know. And in that moment, the Buddha Shakyamuni, recounted that as he reached the site, he had a powerful recollection of the Buddha of the previous eon, Buddha Kashyapa, residing in the very same spot. And the students immediately recognized this sort of auspicious coincidence, this auspicious event that was unfolding. And then that very moment, they requested Buddha Shakyamuni to likewise take a seat and bless the same site. This is a very interesting story that points to several things. It points, first of all, to the capacity, to the awakened activity of enlightened beings, blessing a certain site, and furthermore imbuing it with the blessings, somewhat like charging it, and this creating sort of a lasting imprint of the sacred in the physical world. And the second thing that we can see here is that an awakened being such as Buddha Shakyamuni could recognize the sort of mark of the sacred site, and furthermore it triggered a powerful recollection. It created or caused the spiritual experience. And likewise, this is then shared with the students. So it's very interesting here that this points very early on to this marking of sacred places to leave an imprint of the sacred in the physical world. And this has happened throughout our entire world by all sort of enlightened beings that had tread this world since its beginning, whether it's Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, Mahasiddhas, and especially, of course, as here in our case, also Guru Rinpoche. So whether we can actually see this as physical markings, as many of you probably have seen at one sacred site or another, in the form of handprints, footprints, sacred self-arisen syllables, or as sort of invisible marks that then have later been recognized by other awakened masters. So we can see that this imbuing a certain place that has often quite unique characteristics that other awakened masters can recognize has happened throughout the Buddhist world. And it's actually these very spots that we're then trying to find and trying to travel to in our pilgrimage. And furthermore, it's also the kindness of Guru Rinpoche and the other enlightened masters that sort of made this, again, accessible to us, and also blessed these very same sites with their own presence. And here we can remember again what Rinpoche had kindly shared with us at the beginning, and also what is captured in this quotation that has been very much a foundation and cornerstone of this project. And just to recap, so as it's recorded in the Leo Dunma, when you recount my life story, you will be filled with inspiration. And then the quotation continues and shows sort of increasingly deeper aspects of the spiritual path as we sort of approach an enlightened being, in this case, Guru Rinpoche. But the same applies also, of course, for Guru Rinpoche's sacred sites, and to an extension to the sacred sites of all great masters. So when we actually on a pilgrimage, or as in this case, as armchair pilgrims, engage with the pilgrimage site directly, or hear stories about the pilgrimage site, we start to build a bridge. So what this entails is that we form an emotional connection, we contemplate about the events that unfolded, and sooner or later we reconnect to the historical event that unfolded at the sacred site. And in many ways, we slowly, step by step, and maybe spark by spark, start to relive what the awakened masters have experienced themselves at the sacred site. So when we do this, we apply furthermore many skillful means. Yeah? So we try to get the most out of this, yeah, and not just rely upon the single impression, whether it's meeting the sacred site directly or hearing about it. But we furthermore, we set our motivation, we make aspiration prayers, we make offerings, we recite a Guru Yoga practice, we maybe offer a talk, we also dedicate the merit. So what we're here creating is sort of a fully holistic experience, and we're trying almost like a magnifying glass to really ensure that our entire being is focused on the sacred site or on the awakened master. And we're trying to be as open as possible to really create a channel for these sacred blessings to enter us, and for us to receive them, and for us to transform our own mind as much as possible. And this is actually also what the Buddha emphasized means seeing a sacred site correctly. Yeah. So this is a general introduction, very brief, hopefully gives some glimpses into the meaning and significance of pilgrimage. And now let's turn our attention to the first sacred site of today, which is the great stupa of Boudha, or Dhanakosha in Tibetan. And this brings us to the Kathmandu Valley, to Boudha in Nepal. And it's here that at the great Dhanakosha stupa, in a previous life, Guru Rinpoche made profound aspirations. And I'll hand over to Noor, who is in Boudha, and who will introduce this sacred site to you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for this introduction about how to relate to pilgrimages. Speaking of bodhanath, I think Buddhists anywhere in the world know about bodhanath, even if they've been here or not, as you know, as a wish-fulfilling jewel, or as a source of like very big blessings. It's known for its extraordinary size and its beauty. And from my experience of going to the stupa after having lived here for some time, it's still so sharp. And when you know what to say about seeing it correctly, and we speak about blessings, I mean, for me, it's very visible that, you know, this place is in fact the embodiment of the awakened mind of the Buddha, or the heart of the Buddha, you know? So, yeah, and it's known to be a wish-fulfilling jewel, which is able to fulfill any wish and aspiration that people make to it. In the Pema Kathang, it's recounted. It says that through the power of Avalokiteshvara's aspiration, 2 tears were reborn as daughters of Indra, the king of gods. The royal goddesses by the name of Purna and Little Purna. Little Purna transgressed the impeccable law of the heavens by stealing a divine flower, and so fell to the human realm. There she was born as Samvari, the daughter of Prabhasvara, a poultry keeper. Saving her wages from herding poultry, she supported her sons. And with whatever little she managed to save, she spent on building the future Dhanakosha Stupa. And now I would ask Stefan to continue to give us an explanation about the history.
Thank you, Noor. Very beautiful. So just to locate everybody, here on the map of India, within the country of Nepal, you can see the location of the Boudha Stupa. And here is a beautiful picture from the 1980s. And as you can see also in the picture, the great stupa of Dhanakosha was once overtowering a small village not so long ago, maybe around 30 years ago. So what a great change has taken place in the meantime. And so from the main gate actually of this great stupa, there's actually a route that leads through Sanku and then all the way to Tibet. It's one of the main trading routes that goes up to central Tibet and then to Lhasa. It's also the route that Guru Rinpoche once walked in the past as he entered Tibet. So what was once this great stupa here surrounded by a small village and in the middle of rice fields is now sort of a little bit swallowed by the ever-growing city of Kathmandu. But what has still maintained throughout all of these years is the great blessings of the stupa. And it's sort of nowhere more palatable or visible, the blessings of Guru Rinpoche in the Kathmandu Valley than in Boudha itself. And while in what you can maybe call the chaotic city of Kathmandu, you have a very beautiful, spiritual, vibrant community still upholding the blessings of the great Dhanakosha Stupa in Boudha. And over the, particularly the last, 30 years or so, many great masters have been magically drawn to the stupa and to its profound history and blessings, and have settled in the area surrounding Boudha and have built monasteries. So there's now a treasure trove of around 50 monasteries in the surroundings of Boudha, all led by great masters and all housing treasures of relics. And this sort of creates a very special atmosphere that is further enhanced by the dedicated Buddhist community of Boudha, who actually on a daily basis goes to worship this great stupa through circumambulation, also called kora, through making offerings and aspirations, and through keeping the spiritual atmosphere of the sacred site very much alive. And while there are many stories of the origin of this great stupa, one of the most famous one and most beloved one was revealed as a dharma by Ngak'chang Shakyasangpo. And Ngak'chang Shakyasangpo was born in Yolmo, in the bordering country, in the bordering valleys of Nepal and Tibet. And he went in the 15th century on a pilgrimage to Samye Monastery in central Tibet. And while on pilgrimage there, from the Red Stupa, one of the stupas of Samye Monastery, he withdrew a Terma treasure. And this Terma treasure was an account, a full account of the Dhanakosha Stupa. And as he read it, he realized its profound significance and immediately went back to find this most amazing stupa that the history was recounting. And so he eventually arrived at the current site of Boudha, and he found the stupa basically nearly completely destroyed. From the passing of time, it had almost vanished. And so he made immediately raised funding and commissioned sort of a rebuilding of the stupa to its sort of current glory. And at the same time, then he also propagated its history. And so what is very interesting here, what Noor has started in the beginning sharing with you, is a short excerpt of the Pema Kathang, sort of recounting the story of the Dhanakosha Stupa. And the circumstances when this took place was actually when Abbot Shantarakshita, on the request of Dharma King Trison Detsen, the king of Tibet, and Abbot Shantarakshita was the great abbot of Nalanda Monastery. So when Abbot Shantarakshita was in Tibet, and there were these great challenges arising to the establishment of Buddhism in Tibet, Abbot Shantarakshita said to Dharma King Trison Detsen that it's crucial to invite Guru Rinpoche. And in order to further emphasize the importance of inviting Guru Rinpoche, he recounted in brief what Noor had shared in the beginning, and then it continues a little bit further, why it was so important to invite Guru Rinpoche. And the story that Abbot Shantarakshita shared is that actually it had been that in their past lives, the three of them, meaning Guru Rinpoche, Abbot Shantarakshita, and Dharma King Trison Detsen, had been the three sons of this poultry keeper called Samvari, helping to build this great stupa. And upon completion, they made this profound aspirations to spread the Dharma far to the north, to Tibet. And it was these karmic seeds that were now about to ripen. And it's these sort of auspicious circumstances, this tendril that had to come together, that had to manifest for Buddhism to be really fully established and become long-lasting. Yeah? And Dharma King Trison Detsen realized this profound significance and immediately sent his envoys to invite Guru Padmasambhava. And now we will turn to Peter, who will share a summary of then the profound terma that Ngakchen Shakya Sangpo revealed, which then elaborates the sort of brief story of told in the Pema Kathang. And one more thing to add, so what Abbot Shantarakshita had told in brief, it was that once Buddhism was fully established within Tibet, actually Dharma King Trison Detsen approached Guru Rinpoche then on one occasion and said, there, when I was about to invite you, Abbot Shantarakshita had shared this story in brief. Could you please elaborate it and share it in full? And it was that at that point that Guru Rinpoche accepted the request and told the full story. And that's actually the terma that Ngakchen Shakya Sangpo revealed. And now, Peter.
Thank you, Stefan, for setting up this story, which I'll now recount based on, as Stefan said, this terma text by Ngakchen Shakya Sangpo, revealed by him. And these are the basically a concise version of what Guru Rinpoche recounted to King Trison Detsen on that day. So it all began with a powerful aspiration long ago. Amongst the fertile rice fields of the Kathmandu Valley, in the village of what is now called Boudha, Samvari was born into a modest family of poultry keepers. She grew up following the daily rhythms of farm life. Her days were filled with the humble tasks of tending to the poultry, but her heart harbored dreams far grander than her modest surroundings. Years of toil and sacrifice passed as Samvari eventually became a mother, raising 4 sons all on her own. One fateful day, while tending to her flock, an aspiration took root in her mind: to build a stupa. Realizing that she could not fulfill her aspiration without support, Samvari mustered up the courage to approach the local king. This king, moved by the sincerity of her request and the strength of her resolve, found himself uttering words that would change the course of history. "Let it be done, Jarung." The words slipped from his tongue, Kashur, like a divine decree, and with them he granted Samvari a piece of land to realize her profound aspiration. This earned the stupa the name Jarung Kashur. Let it be done, slip of the tongue, and work began immediately. Her sons, inspired by their mother's devotion, joined in her endeavor, and together they worked tirelessly, laying the foundation and enshrining the relics of Buddha Kashyapa in the stupa's central pillar. Days turned into months and months into years, and the stupa rose gradually from the earth. And although much had eventually been completed, Samvari did not live to see her heart's aspiration fulfilled, and she passed away, eventually to be reborn as a Buddha, Samaya Devi Pramoha. Her sons, meanwhile, took up the task, continuing this endeavor for another 3 years, which brought the total construction time to 7 years in full. And on the day of the grand consecration, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of past, present, and future assembled before the crowd. And then, amidst rains of flowers and celestial song, they dissolved into this very stupa. The Jarung Kashur was thereby transformed into a site of blessing and worship, supreme above all others in the land. Now, standing before the stupa, Samvari's 4 sons made their own prayers of aspiration, one after the other. They aspired to spread the Buddha Dharma far to the north of the Himalayas, to lands that had not yet seen the light of Dharma, to lands that would become known as Tibet. One brother aspired to be a king who would uphold the Dharma in these lands. Another aspired to be a leader of the Sangha there, while the third aspired to be reborn as a powerful tantric master able to quell the uprisings of spirits and other obstacles. Finally, the fourth aspired to become a government minister who would ensure that all of these virtuous activities were carried out. Each of them in turn vowed to play their part in spreading the Dharma far to the north of India's plains, far beyond even the endless mountains of Nepal. And so thus it was at the great Jarung Kashur Stupa that Guru Rinpoche's enlightened activity began with an aspiration. It was a wish that propelled him into his embodiment as the quintessential tantric guru still revered to this day. Indeed, all 4 brothers, later reborn as Guru Padmasambhava, Abbot Shantarakshita, Dharma King Trisong Detsen, and the government minister Nanam Dorje Dujom, they all 4 established the conditions for the Dharma to flourish in Tibet and beyond. And so, this history of the Jarung Kashur Stupa demonstrates the profound importance of making aspirations. And it also encourages us to follow in the footsteps of these great masters by continuing this practice. Aspirations, as we've learned through this story, can carry immense power. And this is a point that cannot be overstated, because you can see through these auspicious beginnings, 1,000-year-long tradition of Buddhist masters and practitioners still uphold the Dharma to this very day. The blessings of the stupa have only been magnified by the countless yogis and faithful pilgrims who have connected with it over its long history, which has deepened the wellspring from which we can also draw. These blessings are palpable, as Nora has mentioned, ever renewing and readily accessible to those with the eyes of faith. So that's it for this kind of presentation of the story of the Boudha Stupa. We're now going to turn our attention to the second and third sacred sites on our journey today, Dhanakosha and Uddiyana, which are the sacred sites of Guru Rinpoche's birth and his upbringing, which Nora will now introduce to you.
Thank you, Peter, for the nice story that you just said. Moving on now to Uddiyana and Dhanakosha. Uddiyana is renowned as the quintessential source of tantric teachings, as a pure realm filled with Vidyadharas, Dakinis, and enlightened masters. It has been home to many Mahasiddhas and visited by many great masters, both physically and through visionary experience, who achieved supreme spiritual accomplishments there. These tantric pilgrims brought back liberating practices for their disciples, and some wrote guides detailing Uddiyana's spiritual topography. These accounts consistently describe Uddiyana as the most sacred destination for Vajrayana practitioners. In the Pema Kathang, there is the following description of Uddiyana. It says, in those days, the western land of Uddiyana held 5 states and 21 counties. At the heart of these states lay Dhanakosha, and Uddiyana's capital, known as Beautiful. In the city center stood the 9-tufted palace, a precious citadel of lapis lazuli. All were there, the fortress of excellent Dharma clouds, the cavern of the immutable Vajra, the charnel ground of dark cloud banks, the place of effortless display, and the temple of Herukas. And specifically about Dhanakosha, which is the birthplace of Guru Rinpoche, the Pema Kathang says the following. It says, south and west of the land of Uddiyana lay an isle with the great ocean, source of auspicious signs. Upon the island was an Udumbara grove of lotus flowers. In the light of the day, the flowers sank below the water surface. By night they rose and bloomed again, shimmering with light. From these Dhanakosha waters, our noble guide took birth. And now Stefan would speak more about these beautiful verses, I think. About the history of Uddiyana and Dhanakosha, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. So now if we turn and to the history of Uddiyana. So historical and scriptural sources identify Uddiyana as a small kingdom in the Swat Valley in present-day Pakistan. And you can see here the location of the Swat Valley, the location of Uddiyana, which we'll be talking about. So originally, Uddiyana was called Uddiyana, which means a grove. And the name of this kingdom, Uddiyana, and not Uddiyana, reflects actually the natural beauty is captured in this name, because the Swat Valley was renowned for the beautiful scenery, the snow-capped Himalayan mountains were surrounding it, especially the Swat River flowing through the valley, which emptied into the Indus River and continued to the Arabian Sea. And you have beautiful meadows with flowers, big forests. And so this actually is the kingdom of Uddiyana. And the name change from Uddiyana to Uddiyana came with the rise of Vajrayana Buddhism. And what the Uddiyana signifies is, if you translate it, it means flying or soaring. And this reflects in many ways, is probably a reference to the divine beings or deities, the Dakinis that inhabited this majestic land. And when we look into the historical sources, so there's an image here of the landscape. We couldn't find too many pictures, but this is, we have two here to show a little bit how this area looks like of the world. And then this here is a painting reflecting, on the one hand, the landscape, but also how an ancient time it might have looked like, with some of the significant landmarks described in the Pema Kathang. So going back into sort of historical and scriptural sources. So one of the earliest sources that we have writing about or describing Uddiyana was by the great Mahayana monk and Chinese pilgrim, Xuanzang, who visited this area during his 12-year-long pilgrimage, which is quite extraordinary in itself, thinking that it took place in the 7th century. And he traveled through, in 12 years, for the entire length and breadth of what you could call Greater India, actually also beyond the current present-day borders. And when he reached the area of Uddiyana, he described also these features that we have just mentioned. And he actually very interestingly recounts that he encountered tantric practitioners, because he writes that the Buddhist practitioners of the area were especially adept in incantations, or otherwise known as mantras. And at the time, for him being primarily a Mahayana monk, this was something a little bit of a surprise. Yeah. So that's quite interesting that we find this reference already in the diaries of the great monk and pilgrim Xuanzang. So the most celebrated accounts, however, and the most sort of detailed and rich information that you can find on Uddiyana comes centuries later from two Tibetan pilgrims that are often praised as the two Bodhigyampas. And there was first of all Urgyen Rinchen Pal, who traveled to Uddiyana in the 13th century. And it took him actually 3 years to get there. And he recounts or records his entire experience in a famous pilgrimage guide called simply A Guide to Uddiyana. And then we have Urgyen Nawang Gyamtso, also known as Taksang Repa, who traveled to Uddiyana in the 17th century. And he actually follows in the footsteps of Urgyen Rinchen Pal, and further confirms the landmarks that Urgyen Rinchen Pal pointed out, and then identifies some further sites. So when Urgyen Rinchen Pal traveled in the 13th century first to Uddiyana, what he visited was, or what he experienced was that actually Buddhism at the time was already very much in decline. Nevertheless, many of the spiritual landmarks were still very much present. And he identified the castle of King Indrabhuti, the ruler over Uddiyana. He also identified the charnel ground, Pema Kathang, the great charnel ground of Uddiyana. And what he described as reaching the very heart center of Uddiyana was the great stupa of Dhumatala, which is the renowned stupa and citadel of the Dakinis at the very heart of the land of Uddiyana. And then we have Urgyen Taksang Repa, who traveled there in the 17th century, confirmed these landmarks, and further mentions the site of Guru Rinpoche's birth, Lake Dhanakosha. Then we fast forward a little bit again. So the next detailed information on Uddiyana comes from the 1950s. And it's here that the great Tibetologist Tucci and his archaeological research mission, all from archaeologists from Italy, started the excavation work in the area of Swat. And they unearthed many of these great treasures that were previously described and found the Buddhist monasteries and great relics. And they also took Urgyen Rinchen Pal's guide as one of their resources, actually, to identify these historical landmarks. And they found, on the one hand, that Buddhism over time had vanished in this area of the world due to many factors. But on the other hand, they found this sort of rich treasury of Buddhist sacred sites, which very much reflected its once glorious times. Yeah? And now just to share with you a little bit what was found. So here we come to the very heart of Uddiyana. This is the great stupa which Urgyen Rinchen Pal identified as the stupa of Dumatala, the very heart in Uddiyana. And here you can see on the picture this very stupa as it's currently preserved. And so nowadays it's called Budgara. And you can see the central stupa, and then in the surrounding area, what were smaller stupas and also a monastery that went along with this great stupa. And then to share this with you, so this is the site which is called the Rajagriha Castle. And it sits on one of the hills above the landscape of the Swat Valley. And this is the castle that Urgyen Rinchen Pal identified as the former residence of King Indrabhuti. And then we come to this to this slide. There's two interesting things to mention here. This is from, again, thanks to the Italian archaeologists. So on the right side here, on the screen, you see sort of a deity which appears maybe like Tara. It hasn't been identified fully yet. Sort of naturally appearing in the rock. And it's actually an interesting feature that the Italian archaeologist mentions, that all over the Swat Valley, you can still find these deities appearing almost like naturally, as if they're naturally formed in the rock. And this creates sort of this unique experience that the entire landscape was sacred and filled with deities. So at that time, you can imagine walking in the landscape of Uddiyana, and wherever you walk, you find in the stone this amazing deities naturally appearing. And it's actually naturally appearing. It's very interesting because this sort of term was actually even used in the article by the Italian archaeologists. And then even more interestingly, which is preserved in the Swat Museum, is on the left-hand side. You actually see a siddha, which, again, the archaeologists themselves noted that this siddha, this depiction, also from a stone, looks very much like Guru Rinpoche. So what you can see here is you have the traditional lotus flower, then you have, of course, the throne held by the lions. And then in the middle, you have the siddha appearing holding a kapala, the skull bowl that also Guru Rinpoche holds. And then in the right hand, and it's not visible here, but archaeologists suggest that this must have been a vajra, like also Guru Rinpoche would hold it. And then on the right and left-hand side, you see two dakinis, or female figures. So this was also a very interesting find that preserved, luckily, the time, and a very interesting connection where we can see a very profound connection here as well. Okay, then very interestingly, while we have this sort of historical location of Uddiyana in the Swat Valley, it was Kyabche Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche in particular who emphasized that actually a sacred land like Uddiyana can exist in multiple locations at the same time. And you can, these sacred sites or these sacred lands, they're not bound to sort of these ordinary constraints of location and time. So they can actually shift or reappear in other locations. And we have also seen this briefly reflected in the Pema Kathang and other scriptural sources, that actually the spiritual boundaries of Uddiyana are not constrained to what once were the political boundaries of a kingdom. Yeah? And actually the spiritual significance transcends, of course, far beyond any historical or political boundaries. And as such, as a tantric pure realm, Uddiyana can appear anywhere at any time. And it's the main medium of pure perception and enlightened vision through which the practitioner can actually access and enter it, unbound by the constraints of time. And one such example is Kyabche Chatra Rinpoche, who was this great awakened master and a great pilgrim as well. And that actually was Kyabche Chatra Rinpoche who in one of his journeys through India and one of his pilgrimages identified another site that holds the blessings of Uddiyana. And what Kyabche Chatra Rinpoche identified was the very famous pilgrimage site of Ujjain. And Ujjain lies in central India and is a very known pilgrimage site to Hindus because it's home to one of the 12 Jyotirlingams, one of the 12 most holy lingams dedicated to Lord Shiva. And it's actually the lingam in the form of Mahakala that is worshipped in Ujjain, and that thousands of pilgrims, probably much more, go to every year to receive the blessings from. And so we have a picture of the main central lingam here, Mahakala, in Ujjain. And then we turn briefly to the site of Dhanakosha. Here again, you can see a depiction reflecting the sacred marks that were mentioned in the Pema Kathang. So it's Urgyen Taksamrepa who briefly mentions the sacred site, the lake of Dhanakosha. But due to the circumstances and the time that he was there, he was himself not physically able to visit the sacred location. But he mentions it, and we have sort of a reference to it in the scriptures, but unfortunately, the exact location hasn't been identified and still sort of awaits the pilgrims. However, very interestingly, in also talking with the archaeologists, they pointed out that there's one very important sort of small pond that is fed continuously by a sacred spring. And the reason that they highlight the sacredness of this particular spring is because it's in a central position in the valley and is also surrounded by a monastery. And it's very interestingly that the archaeologists themselves mentioned that the water was very sweet tasting and had very pure qualities. So this might be something that as a pilgrim we can go to actually and receive the blessings from in the valley of Swat in the area of Uddiyana. And the sacred spring is located below what is called the Jahanabad Buddha, which is this very beautiful stone carving that was partially restored by the archaeologists. And then we have one further shot, a little bit to get also this perspective of how these stone carvings appeared in this natural landscape. And unfortunately, the source itself is not visible, but I thought it gives a little bit a nice impression here. And then very interestingly, again, on the pilgrimages that Kyabche Rinpoche did through India, again, Kyabche Rinpoche identified the second site that holds the blessings of the birthplace of Guru Rinpoche. And that's actually following all along through Pakistan, the Indus River, until it empties into Arabian Sea, very much at the border of Pakistan and India. It's the area in Gujarat called the Kutch. And here there's sort of a small sort of bay island, which nowadays hosts the Mahadev temple, which Kyabche Rinpoche identified as the birthplace of Guru Rinpoche. And here you can see an image of this very site. And the sunset at the very site into the Arabian Sea. And there's a very beautiful feature here that is mentioned in the biographies. It's talked at times that the site of Guru Rinpoche's birth, the waters are white like a milky ocean. And it's actually a significant feature that is present at this sacred site. And it's actually that the salt content in the bay area and in where the water comes in is very high, so that on a cloudless night, when the full moon shines, all the water turns white, like described in the scriptures of Guru Rinpoche's birth. Yeah. So this was a little history on Uddiyana and Dhanakosha. And now we're turning to Peter, who will share a little bit again about the spiritual significance of those two sacred sites. And Noor again will share with you quotations from the Pema Kathang. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for that review of the history of these very amazing places. Some of which we've been to together, some of which we haven't yet, but I hope we can all go together in the future. So we're now going to explore the stories surrounding Guru Rinpoche's birth at Dhanakosha and his youth in Uddiyana. And these stories start with a prophecy of the Buddha. And so, as Buddha Shakyamuni approached his final days, he was fully aware in his omniscient wisdom of the aspirations Samvari's sons had made long ago, and the karmic seeds that were about to ripen. The Buddha's face was lit up with joy as he gathered his disciples around him and spoke with a voice filled with both gravity and warmth.
10 years and 2 after I pass into nirvana, there will come a victor, supreme over all worlds. He will be named Padmasambhava, the Lotus-Born, and will take birth in Uddiyana upon a blossoming lotus. So to teach secret mantra, this is my prophecy.
It was not long after Buddha Shakyamuni had left this world that the prophecy began to unfold. As the time ripened, the blessings of all the Buddhas began to coalesce into a magnificent multicolored lotus, filled with all the signs of auspiciousness, blooming on an island amid the serene waters of Dhanakosha. In a grove of these luminous lotus flowers on one of its islands, a miraculous event took place. Samvari's son was reborn, a fulfillment of the Buddha's promise to continue benefiting beings long into the future.
To the south and west of the land of Uddiyana lay an isle with a great ocean, a source of auspicious signs. This island harbored an Umdubara grove, replete with lotus flowers. During the day, the flowers sank below the water's surface, only to rise and bloom again at night, shimmering with light. It was from these Dhanakosha waters that our noble guide took birth.
As the Buddha had foretold, Padmasambhava's birth was no ordinary event. He miraculously entered our world as a true guru, an uncommon teacher of the secret Vajrayana, fully matured and fully awakened. Dakinis gathered around him, swirling about the immaculate flower that had emerged from the waters. In unison, they invoked all the Buddha's compassion, and their invocation took the form of a prayer, a composition of 7 lines filled with profound and sacred meaning. This very prayer, echoing through the realms, which we heard Kyabche Tulku Organ Rinpoche chant at the beginning of this webcast, is what invited Padmasambhava into our world.
Home, in the northwest of Uddiyana, in the heart of a lotus flower, endowed with the most marvelous attainments, and renowned as the Lotus-Born, with your retinue of Dakinis all around you, following in your footsteps, we pray. Come, inspire us with your blessing.
Responding to their heartfelt pleas, Buddha Amitabha, Buddha of limitless light, sent forth from his heart a golden vajra marked with the sacred syllable Hri. As this divine symbol entered the bud of the lotus flower, it miraculously transformed into an 8-year-old child, endowed with all the major and minor marks of perfection. It was the year of the earth monkey, on the 10th day of the waxing moon in the monkey month, the very day we're remembering and celebrating today. The child held a vajra aloft and a lotus, symbols of his enlightened intent. Poised in serene meditation, he remained upon the heart of this blossoming lotus, fresh and pure despite the mud of the turbulent world. The Dakinis all rejoiced, their chants and songs echoing across the waters, heralding the arrival of Guru Padmasambhava in the form of a mantra, the sound embodying his inconceivable wisdom, love, and dignity. Om Ahung Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Hung. His birth was a moment of profound significance, a testament to the enduring power and aspiration, the enduring power of aspiration, and the boundless compassion of the Buddhas. Thus, the prophecy of Buddha Shakyamuni began to manifest, ensuring that the light of the Dharma would continue to shine brightly for generations to come. Now, at this very moment, the kingdom of Uddiyana had been facing severe hardship. Famine and epidemic swept the land. Its ruler, King Indrabhuti, without an heir, feared for the future of his realm. Out of his profound faith, he made generous offerings to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, praying that its prosperity would be restored and that a fitting heir would come. But as the kingdom's wealth became depleted, all his efforts seemed in vain. The royal seer advised the king that there was only one hope, that he find a wish-fulfilling jewel. And so King Indrabhuti embarked on a perilous journey across forests, deserts, mountains, and seas. And after much toil, the king came upon an island filled with precious gems, and there wrested from a powerful goddess the wish-fulfilling jewel that he so desperately sought. Joyful and relieved, Indrabhuti sailed home to Uddiyana with this jewel. But on the way he spotted something completely unexpected. A young child, radiant and gleaming, seated in meditation within the luminous petals of a multicolored lotus. This child was beautiful to behold, perfect in appearance. His body was the color of a conch anointed with rouge. The king, approaching in amazement, finally said to the child,
Emaho, wondrous, extraordinary little child. Who is your father? Who is your mother? Where is your homeland? To what race do you belong? On what do you nourish yourself? What are you doing here? The little child replied, My father is the wisdom of knowledge. My mother is the blissful emptiness of Samantabhadri. My homeland is the unborn space of all phenomena. My race, the indivisibility of awareness in space. My sustenance, the food of dualistic thoughts. I am here to put an end to all suffering.
Upon hearing these words, the king wept profusely, and without hesitation, the king decided to adopt this lotus-born child and invite him to return with the royal party to the capital of Uddiyana, where this child would then be installed as the crown prince. Celebration filled the streets as this wish-fulfilling jewel arrived, restoring the kingdom's prosperity. And now that their heir was present in the form of padmasambhava, there was nothing left to worry about for them. Uddiyana flourished under the promise of wisdom and compassion from the lotus-born prince, and yet Padmasambhava, despite excelling in all royal sport and training, grew sad in his duties. His father, King Indrabhuti, arranged a marriage to the beautiful and kind Princess Prabhavati, hoping it would bring happiness. But Padmasambhava yearned to devote himself entirely to the Dharma. Finally, Buddha Vajrasattva came before the young prince to personally urge him to renounce the kingdom. King Indrabhuti, upon learning of his son's wish, refused, however, and Padmasambhava was left with no choice but to stage a dramatic departure. He transformed into a crazy yogin and killed the corrupt minister's wife and child, an audacious act that in fact saved these two from further suffering. He instead led them to rebirth in a pure realm. In the aftermath of this tragic event, the palace descended into chaos, and the enraged ministers demanded punishment for Padmasambhava. Heartbroken, King Indrabhuti decreed his son's banishment to the charnel grounds. Padmasambhava chose Siddhavana near Bodh Gaya as his place of exile, setting himself up for a spiritual path free from all royal constraints. On his departure, Padmasambhava turned to his grieving father. "Worldly dwellings are impermanent. Only the Dharma is supreme," he said, as divine guardians appeared, praising this enlightened emanation. Padmasambhava's departure marked the beginning of his journey to teach the Dharma and guide beings towards enlightenment, his every step now a sign of supreme spiritual freedom, a journey blessed by all the Buddhas. So, as practitioners and pilgrims ourselves, the birth of Guru Rinpoche on Lake Dhanakosha can be experienced as an awakening of Buddha nature within our own hearts. To invoke Guru Rinpoche through the 7-line prayer or by chanting his mantra, we are in fact calling forth our own true nature, a kind of birth of the Lotus-Born Guru from within. And upon this birth, the path begins, and on every path we experience the full spectrum of experiences in this world. For Guru Rinpoche, like Buddha Shakyamuni, this meant first enjoying the royal life, with all its wealth, its riches, and all the pleasurables we can imagine. And just like the Buddha, Guru Rinpoche saw their futility and abandoned them in search of the Dharma. So as we walk our own spiritual paths, we'll also be met by every conceivable distraction, even of the most pleasurable sort. And we are thus also called to see the ultimate meaninglessness of these worldly pleasures and instead set forth on our own journey to reap the rewards of the spiritual path. Through doing this, we are walking in the footsteps of the Lotus Guru. So you can see that going through these stories, reading them, trying to take them to heart, we're sort of setting the stage for our own spiritual path. We're coming to see Guru Rinpoche's life in our own life, and our own life in Guru Rinpoche's life. And I just want to say now that I'm so thankful for being part of this journey with the NACORD team, led by Rinpoche, led by Khandro Norbala, and Nora also for joining us as well today, a new member.
Thank you.
And everyone here joining us. So thank you, everyone. Robbie, would you please conclude for us today?
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. This was really a wonderful experience. So I'm very, very thankful that so many of you joined. We were honestly unsure how many would join, and so it's really inspiring for us to see such a large group. And this is a lot of work that's gone into this research, mainly, especially from Peter and Stefan. So again, very, very thankful for you all joining us tonight or this morning or whichever time it is in your home countries. Our next webcast will take place in 1 month, so the next Guru Rinpoche Day. So we really, really hope that you're able to join us again. And if there's any material that you want to revisit from tonight or from this webcast, this is all being recorded and will be available on YouTube. There is a NACOR YouTube channel and a Samye Institute YouTube channel. We'll share these recordings there, but I will confirm exactly how to find it shortly. So before we leave, we do have some important announcements, and we would also like to set some time aside for questions. I'm seeing a few questions coming up in the chat. Let's see. So there was some requests about sharing the slides, but unfortunately we're not able to share these publicly. But if you would like to revisit the recordings, you can see all the images there freely. And if there's anybody else that had any questions about any of the material that we covered tonight, now is your chance. The floor is open to you.
Robbie, maybe continue with the announcement first, and then we go to the questions, okay?
Okay. So the big announcement is primarily regarding our Guru Rinpoche pilgrimage in Nepal. So we're going to be visiting several sacred sites related to Guru Rinpoche, and this will start in March 2025. This pilgrimage will coincide with the first month of the Tibetan lunar calendar, which is particularly significant for virtuous actions and making offerings. The pilgrimage will start on the 8th day, known as Tara Day, and culminate on the 15th day with the celebration of Chochul Duchen, a day marking the Buddha's display of great miracles. You can learn more about this actually in our website, NACOR, in the section that we have on the Buddha. During this pilgrimage, senior lamas from Kaining, Shadrubling, as well as our NACOR team, will guide the pilgrims, leading participants through sacred sites while deepening their spiritual practice. So as Stefan was mentioning during his presentation of how to engage with sacred sites, we'll be approaching it in just that way, as Stefan described, maintaining a keen awareness of the presence of the masters of the site who have practiced there, in this case, Guru Rinpoche, and making soak offerings at the various sites, making offerings of incense and butter lamps, things of this nature. So we really, really hope that you're able to come out. If you've never been to Nepal or Kathmandu, this is a wonderful opportunity to connect to these sites. And it's quite rare to go with these very, very accomplished lamas that we have through Kaining. So we hope that you're able to join. The sites that we'll primarily visit during the pilgrimage, you'll see here, Boudha, as we talked about this evening, Patan, Asura and Yanglasho caves. These are the caves where Guru Rinpoche attained the great city of Mahamudra, his great awakening. The Maratika cave, where Guru Rinpoche attained immortality. And finally, our trip will culminate on, as I said, Choto Duchen, and we'll participate in the Tsekar Drupchen, which takes place annually at Kaining Shadrubling. So please contact us at info@samyetranslations.org if you are interested in joining our pilgrimage. And we will provide further details about this pilgrimage shortly. So lastly, one thing that is important to mention is that our NACOR webcasts and ongoing projects would really not be possible if it wasn't for your continued financial support. Inspired by Rinpoche's vision to make NACOR a comprehensive and profound source of information on all Buddhist sacred sites, we are dedicating all resources to further developing NACOR. Efforts are underway to fully revise our website and app. Our goal is for them to become an ever-growing treasury of sacred sites, encompassing those of all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yidams, Dakinis, and awakened masters who have blessed our world. And as many of you might know, it's sometimes very difficult to find these sites when you arrive to them, if any of you have tried to go on Nekor. So what we are trying to do is make the experience of visiting these sacred sites as simple and direct as possible for any pilgrim, regardless of their background. And we want to expand it beyond just Guru Rinpoche, but into all Buddhist masters. This is the kind of grand vision of the project. So to help make this vision a reality, please consider supporting us with a donation via donor box by either scanning the barcode that you see below here or visiting our website, samyetranslations.org/donate. So if you do have questions, once again, the floor is open to you. We are about an hour and a half in, which is roughly the time that we allotted for this webcast series. So if there are no questions, then we can conclude here.
Robbie, so I was asking people that if they have any questions, please raise their hands in the reaction menu so we can let them unmute and they can post their questions.
I see.
And someone in the chat was asking if there were any plans to organize a pilgrimage in Tibet.
There is, but down the line, we don't have any concrete arrangements just yet, but we are making the aspirations that will occur, and there has been talks of doing such a pilgrimage. But at the moment, we don't have any particular itinerary planned for a Tibet pilgrimage. But it is something we would ask you to keep an eye out for, because it is something we are trying to develop and wish to do very soon. So
okay, Anina is raising her hand, so I'm going to let her unmute, and then we have a few questions in the Q&A box.
okay.
So
Anina, yes.
Hello. I'm just saying that I'm interested in this pilgrimage in March 25.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I sent you an email already.
Okay, yeah, I will have a look at our email and
Okay.
any details that we are arranging for the pilgrimage. But we're very, very happy that you're wanting to join, and as we continue to develop the details, we will let everybody know.
Thank you. And I wanted to thank you for these great videos and yeah, everything
You've been watching
told us about this. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I've been making those. That's been my side project personally, with the help of our narrator who's not here right now, Yuri. So wonderful that people are watching. It's really inspiring to hear back from everybody, because we've been doing a lot of work kind of behind the scenes, and this is the first time we've been able to interact with our fans, so to speak. So really, really thankful that people are engaging with the material.
Thank you.
And we have some questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'm seeing a few. So one question says that, if I'm not wrongly heard, is it true Guru Padmasambhava also have birth like Prince Siddhartha? So this is referring to how Guru Rinpoche was born. Is it the same type of birth as the Buddha? As in birth from a womb, birth from a spontaneous birth, these kind of things. Maybe Stefan or Peter, would you want to answer that question?
Sure. So it's a very interesting point that you also brought up, which from one perspective, in terms of a miraculous birth that also occurred with the Buddha, it is also a miraculous birth in a different sense as well. So on the one hand, with the Buddha, as far as I recall, it was with the dream that Maya Devi had of a white elephant, and then soon thereafter she recognized that she was pregnant and then gave birth. So in that sense, it's also a miraculous birth of the Buddha. But in case of Guru Padmasambhava being also a tantric master, it's actually very interesting that Guru Padmasambhava in the scriptures himself stated, and I think you can find that in the Paksam Junching, which is the wish-fulfilling tree. That's the name of the biography, and it was revealed by Tejin Chukshidishin Lingpa. So at the beginning of this biography, Guru Rinpoche basically states that there are myriad ways that he was born. And one of them, for example, is he states a bolt of lightning on Mount Malaya. And a very interesting statement here that then Guru Rinpoche continues to say is that it's actually not so much of how he himself was born or entered the world, but it's more the perception of the students that defines the birth. Yeah. So depending very much on our own pure perception, Guru Rinpoche can take birth in different manners or different ways. So here it's very interestingly, it's already starting in many ways to be a teaching. It's also connected to later Vajrayana teachings on Kyerim and development stage. But primarily what we can see here as well as sort of the process of ourselves engaging with a particular history. And in this case, sort of almost, we can check our own pure perception or our own development, because Guru Rinpoche, of course, embodies much more than just, in this case, a historical figure. It's very much a completely enlightened being that came into our world, as we have seen also with the entrance statement, then the first very dialogue between King Indrabhuti and Guru Rinpoche at the time is already a profound teaching in many ways. Yeah? So we can see this as sort of a teaching and see a progression and our own pure perception towards Guru Rinpoche and how we can transform that. And then in the Dharma biographies, we see often mostly highlighted the birth from a lotus flower, yeah? Which has an entire significance and history, as you can also look up that particularly the lotus flower in Buddhism is so important. But there are also biographies where you can see, I think, like shared by Dhanakosha, where Guru Rinpoche is described also with a miraculous womb birth, yeah? And many more, as for example, reflected in Terchen Chukshidishin Lingpa's Dharma, where Guru Rinpoche himself made this statement. And then you could go on analyzing just this point alone, you know, because I think even like because we're defining Guru Rinpoche with a lot of concepts, but we're trying also to go beyond these concepts, and Guru Rinpoche is the medium to do so. So it's also, in a sense, a statement that encourages to break concepts and reflect upon that. But maybe we leave it here. I hope that makes some sense and was a little bit useful. We can also share the links to the biography that I mentioned. Make that available.
Wow, thank you, Stefan. That was a very thorough answer. Thank you for that. So there is another question here, and it has to do with Guru Rinpoche and his previous incarnations. So someone is confused as to whether Guru Rinpoche says Guru Rinpoche was an incarnation of the poultry keeper or direct emanation from Buddha Amitabha. I think that I can try to answer this question. So Guru Rinpoche is an emanation from Amitabha. They're inseparable, so to speak. Guru Rinpoche being the Nirmanakaya aspect. And in this situation, in a previous life, Guru Rinpoche was the son of the poultry keeper, who was the person who had the aspiration to build the Boudha Stupa, and who made it actually occur. And so the son of this poultry keeper is actually a female, and the Guru Rinpoche in a previous life was born the son of this poultry keeper, and made the aspiration during that lifetime to be reborn as this great tantric master, in which case this manifested many eons later. Hard to say exactly how in a span of time, but long down the road, this manifested as Guru Rinpoche being reborn as the great tantrika who brought Vajrayana Buddhism into Tibet. So I hope that addresses that question. And there's another question here that says, who will guide the pilgrimage? So maybe this was posted slightly before I spoke, but the pilgrimage, we haven't actually assigned a particular lama, but there will be somebody from the Kaining Shadribling Monastery who will join us, and they will be able to go with us to each of these sacred sites, and we'll be able to perform, the various pujas with them at the different places. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Somebody was mentioning that volume 1 is out of stock. I sent the link to the Kindle version, but I don't know if you have more information about where they can get the physical book.
So two things are happening. First of all, yes, very sorry, it's out of print worldwide. It's still, a few copies is still available in Samye Hermitage, Cooperstown. Well, these can be purchased in the US. We currently don't have international shipping of those. But there's also, as Robbie mentioned before, a lot of things are happening at the same time in the background. We are bringing out a complete revised edition with all the research over the years that we have done. A lot of new information came to light, but also the overall style and writing has changed. So stay also tuned for the revised edition. But I think on Amazon you can still find the Kindle version. You can see, we will see in the next time share if there's a possibility to order those also through Samye Hermitage, Cooperstown, of course. And then finally, I think in other languages such as Vietnamese and Chinese, it should be available right now on the respective marketplaces or websites. Yeah?
Yeah, I can confirm what Stefan said, that Samye Hermitage, New York does have a dozen or so copies of the Following in Your Footsteps Nepal book. And if people do want to get a copy of one of those, you can reach out to Samye Translations, and they'll filter it on to us, and we'd be happy to send it within North America. International shipping is probably quite expensive. But yeah, please do reach out if you're interested in a copy.
Okay, so I think that we can conclude. Thank you all very much. We really hope that you're able to join us throughout the course of this series that's going to continue to unravel through the year. So perhaps we can conclude just with a short dedication. For those of you that don't know Tibetan, it's okay, but this is kind of the standard dedication that's usually done at the end of anything merit making. Sonam diye tamche sikpanya todne ne pe dranam pamjen kega na che bala trupa ye sipe tsole Sure. Thank you all. We hope to see you next month, Guru Rinpoche Day.